There is a silence that appears only before truth reveals itself, and you can feel it now, somewhere between your breath and the space behind your thoughts. This silence is not empty. It is calling you back to the beginning of everything you have ever desired. Before the techniques, before the visualizations, before the doubts and the hopes, there is a single choice that precedes all creation: what you declare yourself to be. And today, we return to that sacred origin. Because before anything exists, before any result takes shape in your life, I am declares it, not as a statement of force, not as an affirmation of effort, but as the quiet, unshakable identity from which your entire reality unfolds. You may not even realize how often you try to change your life by changing everything except the one thing that truly matters, the self you bring to every moment. Perhaps you've been working so hard on techniques, repeating phrases, holding visualizations, searching for signs, trying to stay positive, trying to maintain a high vibration. And yet, deep down, there's a quiet exhaustion, the sense that you are doing so much, but not becoming the one who already has. You're not wrong, you're not failing. You're simply trying to create from an identity that was never designed to hold the life you're asking for. You've been trying to do manifestation instead of being the one who manifests. And that invisible split, the one between what you want and who you assume you are, is what creates the inner friction you can't quite name. It shows up as delay, spiritual anxiety, and the fear that no matter what you do, something will pull you back. This is the forgotten pain of the spiritual seeker, trying to reach a destination while carrying an identity that contradicts the journey. Wanting abundance while silently identifying as someone who must fight for every small improvement. Wanting love while identifying as someone who must earn worthiness. Wanting expansion while identifying as someone who is still repairing what life took. And yet, the moment you really pause, the moment you breathe deeply enough to feel, something in you knows that the real blockage is not the desire. It's the identity behind the desire. Neville called it the only true creative power. Bruce Lipton explains that identity is the subconscious program determining your biology, your choices, your emotions, even what you see and how you interpret life. And together, they point to the same unbreakable truth. Your I am precedes the world you walk into. It is not a phrase, it is not a mantra, it is the internal root from which every possibility emerges. So today, we step out of the cycle of wanting and into the state of being. We cross the invisible threshold from the self who hopes to the self who remembers, because I am is not something you repeat. It is something you return to. It is the quiet identity beneath every other identity you've ever worn, the version of you untouched by failures, stories, doubts, or circumstances. When you feel into it, you begin to sense something powerful. You do not manifest by forcing the world to shift. You manifest by allowing yourself to occupy the identity that naturally receives the life you desire. You're not training the universe. You're training your sense of self. As you continue listening, let yourself soften. Let yourself breathe. Let yourself consider the possibility that nothing in your life has been resisting you, only the identity you've unknowingly been carrying. Because you do not manifest from effort, you manifest from identity. And once your identity shifts, your world follows without resistance. In this journey, we will explore the 10 revelations that show why I am is the quantum pathway to effortless creation. Each revelation is not a technique. It is a doorway back to the truth Neville taught again and again. What you accept as true within becomes fact without. And your I am is the acceptance point where creation begins. So let the old urgency fall away. Let the pressure dissolve. Let the need to chase or prove or struggle loosen its grip. You're not here to get more. You're here to remember who you already are. The world you desire is not waiting for you to try harder. It is waiting for you to inhabit the identity of the one who already has. And as we begin, feel this settle into your chest like a quiet truth returning home. I am is the birthplace of everything. Everything else is commentary. There is a moment in every awakening when you realize that all the effort, all the searching, all the repeating and visualizing has been orbiting around a single forgotten truth. Nothing in your life can rise higher than the identity you quietly accept as yours. And when you look closely, you may notice how often your desires come from one place, while your self-perception comes from another. A part of you reaches toward abundance, yet another part whispers that you are someone who must struggle for every win. A part of you imagines ease, yet another part identifies as someone who always needs to fix or prove something before receiving. This split becomes the invisible blockade. It's not that the desire is wrong, it's that the I am behind the desire is fractured. Identity always precedes behavior, not the other way around. This is why you can try harder, think more positively, or push yourself into new habits and still fall back into old patterns. Self-determination. Theory explains what Neville declared decades before psychology caught up. You do not act according to what you want. You act according to who you believe you are. Identity is the internal gravity that pulls your behavior, your emotions, and even your expectations into alignment. You can want prosperity, but if your root identity still whispers, "I am someone who survives," your actions, your emotional reactions, and your perception of opportunities will quietly bend to that inner declaration. You are not weak. You are simply loyal to the identity you've carried for years. And here is the first twist, the one that softens the breath and loosens the old tension in the chest. Manifestation has never been about adding more to yourself. It has never been about collecting affirmations, layering visualizations, or stacking rituals. True creation begins only when you stop trying to build a new life over an old foundation. The real shift happens the moment you recognize what Neville meant. You are not trying to become worthy, abundant, loved, chosen, successful. You are remembering that these states have always existed within your deeper identity. They are not additions, they are recognitions. And when you recognize what you already are, your outer life has no choice but to echo that recognition back to you. Pause and feel the truth of this. Identity is not built in dramatic leaps. It is accepted in quiet clarity. For a moment, imagine sitting still, letting the noise of your mind settle and completing a single sentence from your deeper truth. I am, not as a wish, not as a hope, not as a demand, but as a direct expression of the version of you that has always been waiting beneath the surface. I am the one who receives with ease. I am the one who is supported. I am the one who is meant for abundance. When this sentence is completed from the identity you desire to embody, something in your nervous system reorganizes. You stop chasing. You start allowing. You stop trying to fix yourself. You start inhabiting yourself. Every identity produces its own outcomes, just as every seed produces its own fruit. You cannot plant an apple seed and expect oranges, no matter how intensely you hope. And you cannot plant an identity of scarcity, unworthiness, or insecurity and expect a life of expansion. The fruit will always reveal the root. This is why Neville insisted that I am is the beginning of all creation. It is the root system of your reality. Before the world reflects anything back to you, your inner declaration sets the direction. You do not need to force the fruits to change. You only need to tend to the root. If you let this concept sink deeper, you will notice a quiet shift happening in your body, a softening, a loosening of all the pressure you've placed on effort. The root identity is where the work truly begins, not because you must labor to fix it, but because once you recognize it, the outer world begins to transform without resistance. Pause for a moment. If this message is awakening something in you, subscribe now. Stay connected to the identity that creates your reality, so each new insight strengthens your I am. There is a quiet struggle that every awakened creator eventually encounters, and it often hides beneath spiritual discipline. You may repeat the right words, hold the right images, set the right intentions, and yet something inside your body remains unchanged. It is a tension you feel in the breath, a subtle heaviness in the chest, a slight tightening in the stomach whenever you declare a new version of yourself. You say, I am abundant, but your emotional body still remembers the years you felt unsafe. You say, I am loved, but your nervous system still carries the echoes of old disappointments. You say, I am chosen, yet a fragile part of you still anticipates rejection. In these moments, the conflict is not intellectual, it is somatic. Your mind reaches forward while your emotional body remains anchored in the past. This divide is not a failure. It is a natural expression of how human memory works. Emotional memory theory reveals that the body holds on to past states far longer than the conscious mind does. The body was built to protect you, and because of that, it imprints experiences deeply. It remembers tone, tension, fear, loss, scarcity, disappointment. It remembers what you had to do to survive. So when you try to adopt a new identity that contradicts these old emotional imprints, the body does not immediately follow. It resists, not to block your desire, but to preserve what it believes has kept you safe. The resistance is not a sign that you are failing to manifest. It is a sign that your new identity is beginning to form and that your emotional body is waking up to a reality it has not yet learned to trust. This is the twist that releases so much unnecessary pressure. Resistance does not mean you are going backward. It means something new is becoming possible. When your body tightens as you affirm a new I am, it is not rejecting the new identity. It is recalibrating. It is adjusting to a version of you that it has not yet inhabited. This is the moment when many people quit, believing the discomfort is evidence they are doing something wrong. But discomfort is often the first signal of inner expansion. The old identity is dissolving. The new one is not yet familiar. You are in the in-between, the sacred threshold where transformation is not yet visible but already underway. When this understanding settles into your awareness, something begins to shift. Your breath slows. Your chest softens. You stop interpreting your emotional reactions as signs of failure. Instead, they become signs of alignment. The emotional body responds slowly because it needs reassurance. It needs presence. It needs to feel that the new I am is safe. And when you breathe consciously, allowing yourself to feel the discomfort without resisting it, you begin to teach your body a new truth. You begin to communicate with your nervous system in a language it understands, consistent emotional safety. The words become embodied. The identity begins to root itself into the cellular level. Imagine updating the software on your device, but still trying to use old files that haven't been synchronized yet. The system doesn't malfunction because something is wrong. It simply needs time to integrate. Your emotional body is no different. You are installing a new identity while the old emotional files are still catching up. You do not need to rush this process. You only need to remain present with it. Each breath becomes a bridge. Each moment of awareness becomes a signal of safety. And as this happens, your emotional body slowly releases the old I am and begins to embrace the new one. As this chapter settles within you, notice how your relationship with resistance is already changing. What once felt like opposition now feels like transformation in progress. The mind has spoken the new identity. The body is learning to feel it. And now, with both becoming more aligned, you are ready for the next layer of understanding. There is a subtle moment on the spiritual path when you realize that imagining a desired future is not the same as becoming the one who naturally receives it. You may close your eyes, see the life you want with clarity, feel the atmosphere of the scene, even experience a brief surge of hope, yet something inside still whispers that it isn't yours. The gap isn't in the vision. It's in the identity behind the vision. Neville spoke of this again and again. The creative act is not the picture you hold, but the self you occupy while holding it. When visualization feels distant or unreal, it's often because the emotional body has not accepted the identity that matches the scene. The mind observes the possibility, but the inner state still speaks from the old I am. You may see abundance, but still identify as someone who survives. You may see love, but still feel like someone who waits to be chosen. The body quietly refuses to collapse a reality that contradicts the identity it trusts. So the visualization remains suspended, beautiful yet disconnected. Quantum theory reminds us that observation is what solidifies possibility. But the quality of the observer, the identity you bring to the observation, determines which possibility becomes tangible. Visualization from lack becomes fantasy. Visualization from identity becomes inevitability. This is why someone who feels like the one who as rarely needs to visualize for long, their inner state already matches the outcome. Imagine allowing one small action to emerge from the identity you wish to embody, not as a ritual, but as a natural expression of your inner truth. Such actions are far more powerful than elaborate mental rehearsals done from a state of longing. They anchor the identity into the body. And once identity shifts, the world reorganizes effortlessly. Trying to manifest from an old I am is like attempting to cross borders with someone else's passport. The details don't matter. The identity does. Creation responds only to who you are being, not to what you picture momentarily. And as this understanding settles, you begin to sense why identity, not imagination alone, is what truly collapses reality. There is a quiet pattern that repeats itself in the lives of many awakened seekers, and it often feels like an invisible force pulling you back into the same experiences over and over. You may desire abundance, stability, love, expansion, yet find yourself circling familiar situations that drain you, limit you, or make you question your progress. This isn't because your desire is weak or because the universe is testing you. It's because there is a hidden I am within you that still speaks louder than the one you consciously declare. The discrepancy between the identity you want to embody and the identity your emotional history still holds becomes the source of repeated outcomes. When you look deeper, you begin to see how these unconscious identities were formed. Childhood experiences shape the earliest I am statements. I am overlooked. I am unsupported. I am the one who must try harder. I am the one who must earn love. These assumptions settle into the nervous system long before the adult mind begins to imagine new possibilities. Attachment patterns from early life become the emotional filters through which you interpret the world. And no matter how much you grow, these imprints linger quietly, influencing your expectations, your reactions, and the opportunities you notice or dismiss. The twist is that life is not punishing you through these repeated patterns. Life is mirroring the identity you may have forgotten you are still carrying. The same financial struggle appears because a part of you still identifies as someone who must fight for stability. The same relational disappointment re-emerges because a part of you still believes closeness is unsafe or conditional. The same emotional cycles repeat because they match the familiar I am your nervous system trusts more than your conscious desires. When you begin to trace recurring challenges back to the identity behind them, clarity emerges. Patterns are not accidents. They are reflections of the inner thermostat that governs your sense of self. Just as a thermostat returns a room to its set temperature regardless of the weather, your identity brings your life back to what feels internally familiar. You may want more, but if your inner setting is still calibrated to I am unworthy, I am unsupported, or I am the one who is almost there, circumstances will bend to match that inner truth. As this understanding settles into your awareness, something softens. You no longer see repetition as failure. You see it as information, as a map back to the identity asking to be released. And from this place of clarity, you can feel the quiet opening to the next revelation. There is a subtle way identity expresses itself that most people overlook, and it often shapes reality far more than spoken affirmations ever could. You may think your I am is defined by the words you repeat in meditation or the intentions you set at night, yet your deepest identity often reveals itself in the instant, emotional reactions that arise without thought. These reflexes speak from the oldest parts of you, parts shaped by survival, memory, habit, and patterns learned long before you were conscious of them. And without realizing it, you reinforce an identity not through language, but through the emotional reflex you return to again and again. This is the pain that so many feel but rarely name, a desire to embody new states while instinctively reacting from the old ones. You may aspire to feel powerful, yet collapse inward when circumstances shift unexpectedly. You may desire abundance, yet tense in the presence of bills or uncertainty. You may want to feel chosen, yet withdraw at the slightest sign of distance. These reactions are not faults in your character. They are simply the nervous system repeating what it has known for years. Neuroscience shows that familiar reactions create loops of dopamine and safety, even if those reactions contradict the life you want. The mind may crave expansion, but the body seeks what feels known. The twist is that your reaction is your real affirmation. It is the moment your identity speaks without rehearsal. Each emotional reflex becomes an internal declaration. I am powerless. I am unsupported. I am unseen. Not because you believe these consciously, but because the emotional body still carries the imprint of them. This is why effort alone cannot shift identity. Identity is reinforced through state, not statement. And until you become aware of the reactions that define your state, you continue to affirm the old I am without realizing it. When you begin to slow down internally, you start noticing how much of your life unfolds from automatic patterns. A comment triggers you. A delay unsettles you. A silence makes you assume the worst. These are not just reactions. They are quiet signatures of the identity still living in your system, and the moment you become aware of them, a new possibility appears. Awareness interrupts automation. It creates a subtle space where you can feel the old impulse rise and choose something different. It is within this space that identity begins to shift. Imagine each emotional reflex as a contract you unknowingly sign with your past. Every time you react from the familiar old state, you reaffirm who you used to be. But the moment you recognize the impulse, pause, and breathe, you create a different agreement, one aligned with the self you are becoming. Reactions stop being evidence of failure and start being invitations to choose a new identity. As this understanding settles into your awareness, the pressure to be perfect dissolves. What matters is not suppressing your reactions, but seeing them clearly enough that they lose authority over you. And with that clarity, you step naturally into the next layer of the journey. There is a layer of identity that lives beneath your thoughts, shaping your life quietly, consistently, and almost entirely outside your awareness. You feel it not in words, but in instinctive reactions, the hesitation before accepting an opportunity, the familiar tightening when something good begins, the subtle expectation that something will interrupt your progress. These patterns do not come from the identity you consciously choose. They come from the identity that was formed long before you understood the power you carry. Psychology shows that most behavior arises from subconscious programs, and Bruce Lipton's work reveals how these identity imprints become woven into your biology. They shape what feels safe, what feels possible, and what feels predictable. You may consciously desire abundance, love, or expansion, yet the unseen I am still behaves as if you are the one who must be careful, who must earn, who must stay small to stay safe. This hidden identity influences what you notice, how you interpret events, and what you allow yourself to receive. The twist is that this identity is not a flaw. It was formed to protect you when you had fewer tools and less awareness, but as you grow, it becomes outdated. When you begin to notice the automatic patterns, the shrinking, the bracing, the expecting of less, you are seeing the old operating system at work, and awareness itself begins to weaken its authority. You recognize that the identity shaping your life is not fate, it is simply familiar, and from that recognition, a new identity quietly begins to emerge. There is a delicate moment in identity work when you begin to sense the new version of yourself coming alive, yet you feel how easily it slips away the moment circumstances contradict it. You hold the state of abundance for hours, then one unexpected bill pulls you back into survival. You feel chosen and worthy, then a small silence from someone you care about awakens old insecurity. This oscillation can feel like weakness, but it is nothing of the sort. It is the natural tension between a new identity forming and an old identity still trying to reclaim its place. Neurological patterns reveal why this happens. Hebbian learning shows that neurons wire together through consistency. The old identity feels stronger not because it is truer, but because it has been practiced longer. The new identity, even when deeply desired, is still unfamiliar to the emotional body. Your nervous system trusts the past because it knows how to navigate it. It does not yet trust the new state, even if the new state is what your soul longs to embody. So the moment life feels uncertain, the body instinctively retreats to what feels known. This is the twist that brings relief. Inconsistency does not mean you are uncommitted. It means your emotional body is untrained. The mind can shift in an instant, but the body needs repetition, familiarity, and softness. It needs to feel that the new I am is not a performance but a home. When you gently return to the identity you choose, again and again without force, you begin to build a new internal baseline. The state becomes less fragile, less temporary, more natural. Imagine heating a piece of iron. If the heat is brief, the metal cools quickly, but when the heat is sustained, the structure transforms. Identity works the same way. The more consistently you return to the new I am, the more it imprints itself into your emotional and neurological patterns. As this understanding settles in, the pressure to hold the state perfectly dissolves. What matters is not intensity, but steadiness. And with each return to the identity you choose, you step further into the reality, waiting for you beyond the threshold. There is a turning point on the path of conscious creation where you realize that waiting for proof before assuming a new identity is the very thing that keeps the proof from arriving. You may long for abundance, love, confidence, or expansion, yet a part of you still hesitates to fully step into that version until life confirms it. This hesitation is subtle. It appears as cautious hope, as holding back just a little, as checking whether things are improving before you allow yourself to feel different. But identity does not bloom through external confirmation. It blooms through internal acceptance. The Pygmalion effect shows that expectations quietly shape behavior, perception, and outcomes. When you expect from the identity of someone who already has, you act, speak, and respond differently without effort. Your nervous system relaxes. Your energy becomes more coherent. You notice opportunities that previously blended into the background. Life begins to rearrange itself around the version of you that feels real on the inside. This shift does not require force. It happens naturally when identity leads and circumstances follow. The twist is that results do not create identity. Identity creates results. The world does not deliver abundance and then declare you abundant. You declare yourself abundant, and then the world organizes around that truth. This is why those who embody their future selves from within often manifest with a sense of inevitability. They are not pretending, they are remembering. Their new identity feels more honest than the one defined by past experiences. Imagine choosing one small area of your day where you let the identity of the one who already has guide your actions. Not as performance, not as effort, as alignment. This subtle shift signals to your entire being that the new I am is not distant, it is alive. Actors fully internalize a role long before the audience sees the performance. They live it quietly until the external world simply reflects what has already become natural. Identity works the very same way. Once you feel like the one who has, life has no choice but to meet you there. With this insight settling into your awareness, you move closer to the effortless state, where the inner identity becomes more real than any circumstance. There is a moment in inner transformation when you begin to notice how easily circumstances try to pull you back into an older version of yourself. A number in your bank account, a delayed response, a sudden shift in plans can make the old identity surface if the new one has not yet become familiar. This isn't a lack of faith. It's simply the body remembering what it used to trust. Most people give more authority to what they see than to what they feel because the external world seems solid. Yet, true manifestation begins when the inner identity becomes the primary reference point. Frankl taught that meaning precedes experience. Neville taught that identity precedes manifestation. When these ideas settle, you start to feel a quiet separation between who you are and what happens around you. The old emotional reflexes lose some of their power. You interpret events in ways that support your new state rather than threaten it. Circumstances no longer define your self-concept. They become temporary echoes of past assumptions. The twist is that effortlessness arises when the inner I am feels more real than any evidence to the contrary. When a contradiction appears, you recognize it as old energy rather than proof of limitation. This recognition strengthens your identity and weakens the authority of the external world. It becomes clear that reality is adjusting to you, not the other way around. A mountain climber trusts the rope more than the cliff face. In the same way, when you trust your identity more than circumstances, life begins to reorganize without resistance. And in that trust, manifestation becomes a natural unfolding rather than something you chase. When all the insights of this journey settle, everything returns to a single origin: I am. Neville called it the creative name because every state, every shift, every manifestation emerges from this inner declaration. It is not a phrase you repeat, but the identity you accept in silence. The world cannot reflect anything beyond the self you agree to be. Joe Dispenza's work reveals why this is so powerful. Identity shapes neural patterns, and neural patterns create predictable outcomes. The moment you embody a new I am, your perception, energy, and behavior reorganize to match it. Your desire becomes fulfilled internally long before it appears externally. The quantum truth is simple. Identity collapses reality faster than action. Circumstances rearrange themselves around the self you inhabit. Everything else is commentary, movement around a center that never shifts.